From WLWT, this is the Emmy Award-winning show, Let's Talk Cincy. Presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. Today, we're talking music. And I mean, it is always good to talk jazz.
Absolutely.
And we're also talking about a great project that's hit the air. It's a documentary about King Records. And here to talk about that is Jimmy Ayinorin. So first of all, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about the King Records project to begin with. You told me this goes back, maybe 10 years?
Yeah, I started working on this in 2016. And yeah, my creative partner and I, JP Leong, were looking for ways to tell different stories about Cincinnati. And we had been working on just various different projects about storytelling in Cincinnati's history, working with different organizations. And this became something that we wanted to do that represented our musical roots in Cincinnati and also could help kind of venture in some of the things that we'd been learning about Cincinnati since moving here.
There was a day, there was a time when I used to dance.
The history of King Records is pretty astounding in that it had the diversity.
When I used to praise.
When you think about the legacy of funk, particularly the legacy of James Brown,
Don't worry about it later.
much of that was created here in Cincinnati.
Think the dance I used to do.
This is a mecca. Cincinnati was the musical mecca.
At the time you started this project, were you surprised, as many people are, including myself, that the story had not been told as much as it should have been?
I was not that surprised about it because it's so very Cincinnati. I've always told people that this is one of the best cities in America, but we don't want anybody to know about it because we want to keep it that way. And that seems to kind of be the nature of Cincinnati. You know, we have all these hidden gems around our city, and especially in our city's history, that we don't do a great job of storytelling because we're a classic Midwestern city that doesn't like to thump its chest too much. We know about the contributions we made to this country, and we're comfortable and content with our community, just keeping it to ourselves.
Give me your impression of Sid Nathan, what you learned about him and his contribution to the music industry, to race relations. And look, he was doing this all business. He wasn't out there on some social agenda. But the impact he had was pretty impressive.
It was pretty impressive. It's kind of something that we, I think, take for granted, that the way that America diversified its markets was really market driven. It was financially driven. And Sid Nathan was very much that. But he's a classic character in the pantheon of record label executives. You had Leonard Chess as a classic character as well. Sam Phillips is a classic character. All of them are unique individuals that probably wouldn't fit in polite society or in other different areas, but in the record business, they really were able to find their voice. Sid Nathan was cantankerous at best, if I'm being polite, and he had a personality, and he also, from his personal background, understood that other people face different challenges around navigating society, because the way that people culturally the way that people moved, depending on what culture you were from, is a little different than it is now, especially in the 1950s. There was definitely a different landscape, almost like a caste system that was in place. So he understood where he stood in the caste system. And because of that, when he started King Records, with the advice of his personnel directors, Bernie Siegel, decided that he wanted to, Ben Siegel, he wanted to have a racially open company, and because of that, King Records was able to venture into different markets they otherwise wouldn't be.
It's interesting because I'm hearing you, we're talking about King, you mentioned Chess. We don't even think about record companies anymore, isn't that almost strange?
Well, as a musician, I think about record companies all the time.
Yeah.
But you're right. The record business has become much more corporatized than it was during this generation. And because of that, there isn't this force of personality that are driving these companies as much any longer.
Yeah, because when I grew up, I mean, I can vividly remember the label of Capitol Records, and of course Motown and King.
Yeah.
And so many others.
Yeah, the landscape of American music business is somewhat altered, but there are a lot of things. One thing that I found that I was kind of surprised to find was that it's largely stayed somewhat the same. But the force of personalities that drive these companies are no longer there. You don't usually have some grand impresario that is lording over the artists as much any longer. Things are much more siloed.
Let me take a break and we'll come back talking about a great new documentary out about King Records. Back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone. Anytime I can talk about music and films, I enjoy that. You started, as you said, working on this King Records documentary back in 2016. Take us through, because that's a lot to pull together. I can imagine all the rights you had to secure and things of that nature. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a lot of it began with a lot of research. So I first started reading all of the books that touch upon anything related to King, whether it's the artists or the time period. And then also kind of a deep dive into Cincinnati history. So I wanted to be able to contextualize the story in both American history and Cincinnati history. So it required a lot of real deep levels of research, talking to people. And then putting the interviews together. But one of the more complicated things, I actually had to learn how to make a film, because I did not know what I was doing at the beginning of this journey. So the first versions and the first iterations of the film weren't particularly strong. They weren't really what I was looking for. But I was fortunately able to get some support from some individuals from different foundations in town, and they were able to help me really get the vision that I was looking for. But yeah, it was a long, laborious process, but it was mainly a process of learning. It just took a long time to be able to learn how to put a film together, learn all the various aspects. But it's a constant learning process, learning how to be a better leader. You'd be really surprised how directing a film forces you to, if you're going to ask a question, I'm sure you're familiar with this, to ask a question. A lot of people don't really understand that learning how to ask a question that brings probative value and that also illuminates something is not the world's easiest task. So learning how to do those things took a lot of time, because filmmaking is an art form to itself and something that you really have to master. So I spent a lot of time really working on filmmaking, watching a lot of films, watching a lot of documentaries. And just learning the art form. And that's really kind of that's part of the journey. The rights portions of it, though, believe it or not, like most business transactions, was fairly straightforward. Okay. And I was very fortunate to have a lot of rights companies, the places where I acquired rights from, were very excited about this. People haven't really asked for footage or artists from the 1940s and 1950s for years. In some cases, some of the things that I was requesting or looking for hadn't been seen since the 80s or 90s, or even sometimes in some cases when it first aired. So they were very excited to help, and they really worked with me to work with my budget, to find ways to make it work. And that process was very learning. Was a really healthy learning process. I gained a lot of mentors and friends in that process. But yeah, generally a lot of people talk about how rights acquisition is generally challenging, but in this case, because of the nature of the story, a lot of the people who were involved in that work were really helpful. They did a lot of research for me. Oh, have you seen this? Did you know this happened? And yeah, it was a really kind of beautiful and kind of reaffirming process to learn that a lot of people are very interested in Cincinnati stories.
Sounds like you had fun with this too, being a musician, huh?
Yeah, this was kind of the benefit of this is that it captures some of the best moments of my life. You know, in my personal life, my children are coming to maturity, and getting to see them grow as a musician, learning about music and learning about the entertainment business and the entertainment industry from a different perspective was a lot of fun. You know, there's just a lot of things that I've always been wondering about. How does this work in the industry, and how does this work, and why do people do this? A lot of those things came into full focus with complete understanding now.
When we come back, we're going to talk music. We'll come back to the King Records project, but you are a jazz drummer.
I am.
And I'm looking forward to hearing that story as well. Back in a moment. In addition to making documentaries, you play the drums.
I
a
do.
Jazz drummer. First of all, how did you choose the drums as your instrument?
I'd like to say that the drums chose me. Yeah, you know, I started playing classical music in grade school, and I used to live in a community where classical music, there's just a lot of opportunities for classical performance, and was able to get a lot of tutelage from some really great teachers. And I eventually moved to the drum set, and from then that just became like a passion and a lifelong obsession for me.
You talked about your classical background too. I was telling you I had this similar background playing the violin. And so we started talking about jazz artists. Recently we lost a jazz great drummer, Jack DeJohnette.
Yeah.
And you said that was your favorite drummer.
Yeah, he's been an obsession of mine for several years. I've listened to every record he's ever performed on, which isn't, you know, the King Records project is kind of an extension of something I do by nature. That's not the first record label I've done an entire catalog or history of. And in Jack's case, as well as Tony Williams and Elvin Jones, I spent years where I would only listen to Jack DeJohnette or Elvin Jones, where for like a good friend of mine, J.D. Allen, who's a well-known sax player, one day told me, he's like, "Who's your guy?" And I was like, maybe Jack. And he's like, "Name me this record," and I couldn't do it. So from then on, I went home and I listened to I think for a year, I listened to so much Jack DeJohnette that I couldn't listen to him anymore. Yeah, it's kind of just the process that jazz musicians do. We are avid music listeners as well as players.
Yeah.
And there's just something about Jack DeJohnette that speaks to me. You know, he's a creative mind that was able to continually create and push the instrument further through multiple eras, which is rare in artistry. You know, a lot of people have short windows of time when they can execute greatness. In Jack's case, you see him do it in every era, you know, from 60s, early playing with Jackie McLean, when he started playing with Miles. Then you see his work at ECM, which is storied and beautiful and amazing, but changed jazz in a very unique way. 70s jazz is very different from 50s jazz. And then you see him in the kind of what I call the resurgence of traditional jazz in the 90s, where he's playing with guys like Michael Brecker and playing with all kinds of people. And then his late stage, where he's getting together with the children of people who he used to play with, is really kind of beautiful and so telling of his personality, of how he really saw himself to be the standard bearer of this art form.
You play on the jazz scene here in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Is the jazz scene getting better?
I mean, I always like to say that the jazz scene was at its best during my younger years, like every seasoned vet likes to think, but I actually do. You know, CCM is such a treasure that we have here in Cincinnati that I think we take for granted. Some of the best musicians in the world have studied here. Every generation of CCM is able to put out kids who perform at the highest levels. The jazz program right now, I am constantly amazed by. The skill set that the kids coming in as freshmen just blows me away. It's and I may be a little biased. I'm a parent of a child in the jazz program.
No, it's a great program.
It's a tremendous program, and it's something, you know, as we were looking for a program that was a good fit for our family. We looked at everyone, we looked at every one of the great programs, and my daughter got accepted in all of those programs. And the teachers, especially the piano teacher and the jazz program at CCM, Sergio Palma, is amazing. You know, like, it's just completely surprising how you have, how we've been able to curate some great leadership in jazz to really take the generation further, and it's beautiful.
I don't know if you've gotten involved with the Jazz Hall of Fame. It's a great organization. It started maybe about 10 or 12 years ago. And I got involved with that this year, and just impressed by the level of participation and artists that they've recognized. So I wouldn't be surprised if they'd be calling you. Let's talk about our mutual friend Laura Gentry, who doesn't get enough credit
at all
in this city when it comes to her knowledge of jazz. I know she's probably throwing something at the TV right now that I'm doing this, but really, she's a good friend of yours, a good friend of mine.
Yeah, so Laura is an amazing mentor. You know, I have learned so much about being a better human being. The way that she treats people is kind of like the first hallmark of who she is as a person. You know, she has an accounting background, which every jazz musician needs, somebody who knows how to handle money. So that's one benefit that Laura has. But then she just has a stick-to-itiveness. She just has this nature that really knows how to get things done without drama. So working with her is always, it's like, okay, Laura's here. Everything's gonna be fine.
And her knowledge of jazz.
Oh, she is deep. She's not just a jazz fan. I'm always surprised that Laura is not a jazz musician herself, because just from osmosis at this point in time, she should be able to play like 12 instruments. But
she probably plays those 12 instruments in her mind.
In her head, but yeah, she knows everyone.
Let me take a final break, and then we'll come back and wrap things up. Back in a moment. Just an enjoyable conversation with musician and now producer, movie producer. Yemi, let's go back to the King Records project. People should know that it's still available to see. PBS, this was a PBS project.
Yeah, so it'll be available for streaming for several years on the PBS Passport app, which is a great way to support public television, but that's their streaming.
Now more than ever before.
More than ever. You know, one of the things that this project really illuminated to me is just the importance of PBS. It's become controversial, but this film, there's no way that this film would have ever been able to make money. That's really the reason why this film hasn't been made. People have tried, but there isn't any financial benefit in telling the history of a city and a part of the country that most people consider flyover country, whether we like it or not. So there's no financial benefit to this. But that doesn't mean it's not important. And PBS, because of how they are community funded, as we all contribute to that, is able to look into stories that don't have that kind of value, but have probative value for our culture. And that's what really allowed this to happen. And the way they do things really impressed me. They really, really care. And they care about facts, and they care about the truth. They care about the quality of the content as well. And you know, I enjoyed the process, but I've been told that a lot of filmmakers don't enjoy the amount of scrutiny that they are usually put under, because there's a lot of scrutiny. PBS really, like I said, PBS really cares. But I really got to see how passionate they are, how committed to mission. It was really inspiring because I learned about the level of commitment to mission that it takes to create a great work. And this applies in my career in computing as well as in my filmmaking career. And it's something that I've really taken away from this process is from PBS and the people who work at PBS is how committed they are to really doing amazing stuff for the American people. And right now, you know, the Ken Burns project on American Revolution, which is amazing. And things of that nature and that level of detail and quality they bring to every project that they put out. And the care that they put into this was really touching and really amazing.
I've always thought that more people would see the greatness of like a project like Ken Burns. I mean, he set such a, and is setting such a high standard that you would think more would jump on that type of bandwagon. But it takes a commitment, takes money, and it's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's also difficult because, again, as I said, there's no financial incentive for putting a film on PBS. You know, Ken Burns is not a wealthy person.
Yeah.
And it takes a special kind of person to do the amount of work that's required for filmmaking, to do it in essence for volunteer. My business partner JP Leong and I, we volunteered. Like we've lost a remarkable amount of money on this project that we're not going to be able to recoup through the project. We're going to have to create something else to be able to recoup that if we're going to. But we are passionate about our city, and we're passionate about this story, and we're passionate about the fact that it needed to get done. And that's what drove us. And for other people and for other filmmakers, they don't have a career. You know, that's the beauty of Cincinnati is that I can have a full-time career, raise my family, but also have an artistic career because this community really values arts. And because of that, and because of Cincinnati is why we're able to do this. But it's very difficult for other people to do this, and I'm hoping that there are more opportunities where we'll be able to continue to tell Cincinnati stories.
Yeah, there will be, and hats off to you because I know it took a huge commitment on your part to invest time and resources into making this happen, but it's a great project. I enjoyed the talk about jazz too.
Oh, I think we're gonna have some coffee later, and
we will.
Because I've got some eras to talk about. I've got some hot takes.
Hey, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Curtis Fuller. We'll see you next time for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Have a good day and a better day tomorrow.